Third iteration of the Bisimoto Tech2sDay series. I appreciate all of you joining us and also bearing with us through these very interesting technical difficulties. You know, as they say, when it rains, it pours, so it's really weird that we had all these challenges with sound, so I sincerely apologize. But hopefully this will be a great talk, the best ever, and we'll have a good time. And I want to start off today, as I always do, with a performance part, a performance upgrade that's near and dear to my heart, something that is very unique and very exciting that many, if not all of you, can implement in your builds. You know, last time we talked about valve springs, and this time we're going to talk about a modification that is very simple, one that is very easy to implement and can have some decent gains as well. And that is this weird looking gasket here. This is what is known as a heat shielding intake gasket. And it's made of a material that is phenolic in nature that can withstand significant heat without burning or melting, at least when you have the proper ones. And this is one of the ones we carry, which is really cool. It's for a D16Y8. And the cool thing about this is it really does a great job in creating some power. And I'll share with you how. As I mentioned in the previous talks, engines, internal combustion engines, are just glorified exchangers of energy. Allows you to take chemical energy, create heat, and then create mechanical energy. And the one way of making power is by having as much of a dense mixture of oxygen-rich molecules in a given ingestion of air, combusting that with the appropriate amount of fuel and creating heat. So one cool way of doing that is by alienating the heat of the engine to the intake, because the intake manifold has a great duty of allowing air to enter into the engine. It is the atmosphere that feeds the power plant. And the cooler you can have that air come into your engine, the more power you can make. What this simple gasket does, it allows you to alienate the heat of the engine that's pretty much in the head quite a bit from the intake manifold, allowing you to ingest a cooler intake charge that's denser and more power friendly. And the great thing about this is it's also reusable. So most gaskets for the intake manifold are some kind of composite or paper-based composite that you can only use once, and sometimes you have a hard time even scraping it off. This comes off very clean and has an opportunity to really alienate heat. And we've seen on dyno tests anywhere from 3 to 5 horsepower on an inline 4 engine, which is very nice. So you have a simple gasket that pays for itself after 2 uses and can create some really good opportunities for power. So just a little tidbit. Whenever you're taking your engine apart, whenever you're building something, whether you're boosted or naturally aspirated, or even using a chemical supercharger like nitrous, intake heat shielding gaskets, very good buy. So hopefully that helps a lot of you out there. I use this on all my projects. So that being said, let's get to some of the questions you submitted. Thank you so much, guys, for submitting questions via this medium on Instagram Live, also via Facebook, and some of you even wrote in. So my lovely assistant Ariana is going to help me today also with some of the questions that have come from many of you, and I'll get to as many as I can today, I promise, within the time that we have allocated. So Ariana, without much ado, what do we have today?
Our first question is actually an email.
Okay, we have an email, good.
This is from Matt.
Matt, hello Matt, if you're watching. Thank you so much for submitting your question.
Okay, he writes, I have a 1991 Civic Si with the D16 A6.
Oh, one of the engines I love, good.
I managed to get a rod knock in it somehow.
Oh.
I've already purchased Speed Factory racing rods designed for the Viatra pistons and purchased some Viatra pistons as well.
Okay.
In terms of valve train and cylinder head, I plan on running your turbo cam and doing the valve springs with titanium retainers.
Okay.
With your experience on the engine side of it, what is a realistic power number on a turbo setup with those internals and cylinder head setup? All the other supporting mods will be done as well. I'm torn between which turbo to run. I was going to do a Precision 5862, but I know it would take forever to spool on a D16. It's going to be an autocross street car, so I want a quick spool. What setup would you recommend running on that engine? Okay,
so Matt, you asked a lot of questions. I'm here to assist you as much as possible. The one thing that you and I love your setup, by the way, it's really good. Great valve train, great choice in camshafts. As you know, with the Bisimoto level 2.4 and 3.6 cams, they outperform everything out there in the market. Very good camshafts. So you have a lot of promise there. So you have the ability of making anywhere comfortably on pump gas from 360 to north of 400, very comfortably with the right turbo choice with the components you chose. However, where you and I don't agree upon is on the Viatra pistons. I am not a fan of those cast pistons. The Vitara pistons, for those of you who don't know, is more of a budget setup, originated in Puerto Rico. These are people who took a Vitara Suzuki Fodara engine and found out that the compression height is somewhat close, not exact, but somewhat in the vicinity of what a D series would experience, whether it's a D16, A6, a D16 Y8, Y7, Z6, and so on and so forth. So that being said, it's kind of close, and some people think it's a budget opportunity. But here's the thing. They are cast pistons, they do low compression, but they are not very strong. And what that means is, what may end up initially looking like a budget build can be a bit of a budget buster in the long run. When they do go out and they do break, they take everything with them. So many of you may have seen a very popular post online on the forums where people use Vitara pistons and they have a failure. When the pistons fail, maybe due to just stress or an improper tune or knock from improper fuels, whatever the case may be, those pistons, instead of forged pistons, which would just probably melt or just, decay on itself, a Vitara piston shatters. When it shatters, it takes the head with it, it takes the turbo, it takes a bunch of components with it. So in my opinion, thinking ahead, really beginning with the end in mind, you want to be able to invest in a proper forged piston set. One of our partners, Trom, they make this great piston set for the D series. They're forged pistons, very, very strong, very robust, and God forbid something happens to your setup, the pistons don't shatter and disintegrate and kill your turbine, your turbo, and destroy your valve train and the seats and the combustion chamber. It doesn't do that. So what you may think is a budget now, in the long run, could be something that is a budget buster, as I mentioned earlier. So the only thing I would change, you can still, use the same source for the rods, but definitely invest in a good set of forged pistons for your engine. You will thank me later. And with that, your final set of questions talked about what turbo to use. The 58, 57 millimeter compressor wheels from Precision are very good setups, and yes, very popular in the drag circuit as well with the smaller displacement engines. I would, for a road race autocross setup, I would go more towards a 55 millimeter, something a little smaller, that can give you a better spool, and if you push it, you can meet or exceed that goal of 360 to 400. And it'll be a very, very fun autocross car, so you can eat your cake and have it too. One thing that you have to really bear in mind is to use a very good engine management system, because that is the brain of the entire setup. And definitely, anything past the turbine, open it up. Do not restrict it. If your system allows you, if your car, which we've done on EFs, if you can run a 3-inch piping, do it. Do whatever you can to run a very, very large piping. Allow that turbo to breathe, and you will see great results. Engine management solution, tuning is critical. You can have the best components in the world, but if your tune is poor, partial and full throttle, your project won't be very successful. So best of luck to you. Let us know how that turns out, but really think about what I said in terms of your piston and engine management solution. Okay? Thank you, Matt, for that question. And thank you, Ari, for sharing that.
No problem. Our next question is an Instagram question from Shant McGuffin.
Hello, Shant McGuffin. Oh, yeah, that's the guy. He wrote to us and told us what his name meant. Good guy. Okay, fantastic.
He writes, I've always wanted to know more about differences among types of fuel, so I'll be tuning in.
Okay. So he wants to know the differences between...
among types of fuel.
Well, that question could be quite wild because different fuels have different caloric content. So we talked a little bit about that last session, I should say, not last year, but last session. The fuel is a very important component of making power. So as we talk about, once again, the engine, the internal combustion engine being an energy converter, you have the initial components of that conversion, which is a chemical energy. You have the oxygen in the air, which combusts to form carbon dioxide and water and create a lot of heat, which does work on the pistons. You have the fuel, which has a very strong influence on how much power is being made. So that being said, if you're thinking about gasoline versus E85 versus methanol, those three fuels have different caloric content. And that caloric content is actually, when we think about using a unit of air and how much fuel is used to combust that unit of air, how much heat is created by that air. Methanol reigns supreme. E85 is a close second, and of course petrol, or E10, or regular gasoline you get from the pump, is the lowest of the few. Then we don't get into kerosene or toluene or acetone or stuff like that. But those three are the most popular ones. So the thing about methanol is it's not very friendly when it comes to maintenance. When you use methanol, it creates a lot of great energy. It cools down the intake charge more than you'd even see with an intake heat shedding gasket. When you combine the two, it's even better. But you have to pickle your system after running it. Pickling means you have to flush the system because it does attack aluminum. It does attack your injectors. If you leave it in a long period of time, it devulcanizes the rubber in your system. It's very, very challenging. It's very, very aggressive in deteriorating components of your fuel system. So flushing that maintenance is very, very key. E85 is not so bad. E85 is also hygroscopic, so it does absorb moisture from the atmosphere. So that being said, just like methanol, when it sits for a while, it can become less potent and could also corrode systems, and it can really oxidize iron. So if you have any iron-based components in your fuel system, in your tank, it can really rust or deteriorate it. And then gasoline is a lot more friendly. So it depends on what your goals are. If you want the most power, methanol is the way to go, but it takes some maintenance. 85 is a little bit of a compromise between the two and very, very commonly obtainable. Companies all around the globe carry them. One that's popular in the Southern California area is Propel. And next week, I'll actually talk to you guys about testing and how you can very easily test the ethanol content of your fuel. We're now getting towards the colder months to allow easier starting. Some of the gas companies tend to have a higher content of fuel in the ethanol blend. So you may not see E85, you may see an E70, E65. I'll share with you a very cost-effective, easy way next week to be able to determine the ethanol content in your fuel. It doesn't have to do with any dielectric constants. You don't have to get any fancy devices. I'll give you a hint. It has to do with hygroscopy. So we'll talk about that next week. So that's a great question. Thank you so much for that. And what do we have next, Abby?
Our next question is from I Drive an E28.
I drive an E28. Hopefully you're watching this evening.
What do you look for when starting a new project? You're not the kind of dude who follows the norm by buying a Nissan S chassis and 2JZ swapping it. You do more pretty funky stuff, and I'm curious to know what your starting process of selecting the chassis is.
Okay, so long story short, he wants to know what my product or my process is in selecting a chassis. And he also noticed that I'm a bit of a contrarian. I don't tend to follow the norm. It's not that I am a contrarian on purpose. I just love creating and figuring things out and doing things that are quite different. I'm not the kind of person that follows the herd. I tend to blaze my own path. So the one thing that is paramount in me choosing a chassis is one that is enjoyable. It has to be. So one of the big projects we built recently was a driver-focused project. And we'll probably talk about that a little bit next week as well. It's a center seat Porsche with a mid-engine. So since the mid-engine Porsches are extremely balanced, how better yet to balance the driver's experience than to put him in the middle of the car? So it's all about being driver-centric, and that enjoyment is paramount for me. So it has to be a chassis that's very enjoyable and that can give the driver this exhilaration or great experience. Secondly, reliability. You have a chassis now that's very unique, that can really just raise eyebrows everywhere and make the driver extremely happy. What else could make a driver just absolutely beside him or herself? The fact that it runs and runs well for a long time. So you see everything from the Odyssey we built to the first Porsche that I did in 2006. All of these projects continue to run till today, and people beat on them, media people take them, so on and so forth. Reliability is key. And how do you ensure that reliability? By choosing optimum components. Beginning with the end in mind, not skimping, because honestly, you hear that phrase, penny wise, pound foolish. You try and save a penny, and you end up spending pounds and pounds to rectify the mistakes earlier. Save up, buy the right components, protect your components properly with the right oils and lubricants, use the right engine management solution, invest in a proper tune, and you will enjoy that setup very, very well. Something else is, I love things that are extremely, dare I say, in your face. I love to show off the engineering. So you see a lot of my components or vehicles with the turbos hanging out or the headers showing. I love that. That's part of that whole experience as well. Something to make it very, very enjoyable. So that being said, drive enjoyable, capabilities, reliability, very key. And those are two things that really drive me in choosing a project and being able to do something very, very cool. So I hope that answered your question properly, and I look forward to more from you. Thank you so much.
Our next question is from AJ Thompson 78.
Hello, AJ Thompson 78, and hopefully you're tuning in to this third BC Tech Tuesday. And what did AJ ask of us today?
He asked, is the J35 engine that's in the Odyssey still using the standard crankshaft? And when or if you were to rebuild its engine, would you consider opting for aluminum rods for reducing bearing wear?
Excellent question. So he's asking about the Odyssey. I have this 2014 Odyssey that I built in partnership with American Honda in 2013. It's one of the most popular vehicles in our stable here. And that vehicle made 1,029 horsepower, 41 PSI. We continue to improve that setup from time to time, finding more efficient heat exchangers for the intercooler, finding denser fin counts. That's something we should probably talk about heat exchange and cooling in one of the sections coming up. That's a very, very important, very good topic, so we'll definitely cover that. And we had 7 weeks to build this car from 0 to hero, so that was very stressful. The most difficult project for me to build ever. It was enjoyable. I wouldn't recommend that again. I don't think I'd do that again, but it was a very good experience. So to answer your question, yes. Surprisingly, we've tested a lot of crankshafts from Ford, Hyundai, Honda. The metrology nowadays is so superior that we can get away with a lot. So if you really think about that, it's close to 200, not even, it's less than 200 horsepower per cylinder to be able to get the power we have. And the factory crankshafts are very, very strong and robust. So I'm using a factory crankshaft. I'm using factory caps on the crank, but I'm using ARP main studs to keep things in check, because you definitely don't want separation of the cap from the body of the block itself. And then his second question was around, what was the second question around with the J series?
If you were to rebuild
If I was to rebuild it, would I consider aluminum rods? So I am a huge advocate of aluminum rods, very huge advocate of that. And the reason why is because, unlike steel rods, aluminum rods are extremely forgiving. They are shock absorbers to some extent. They also act as, you'll love this guys, as a variable compression device. And what I mean by that is, because of piston to head interference, when you're building an aluminum rod engine, you do not use the same clearances as you would a steel. Many of us can build flat 6 engines, inline 4 engines, inline 6 V8 engines. We can build them with a 30 thou piston to head clearance using steel rods. Don't dare that with an aluminum rod. The aluminum rod, depending on the weight of the piston at the end, could be anywhere from 50 to 70 thou piston to head clearance. And yes, you may think, oh my goodness, that's quite a distance, but when the aluminum heats up, it does tend to expand. And when it does expand, it gets you to the ideal static compression that can allow you to have a very good dynamic compression ratio to allow you to make good power. Now, how is it a variable compression device? Of course, your static compression is much lower when the engine is cold. So it's easier for the starter. So that's one good thing about that. Very easy for the starter, easier on the starting system to get the car going. When it warms up, the rods expand, get you to the ideal compression ratio that you can have great power with. Now, because it's made of aluminum, God forbid you have a bad batch of fuel or something silly happened on the dynos, so you start detonating a little bit, the aluminum rods do a great job in absorbing that. And they're extremely lightweight. So I love aluminum rods, particularly for drag racing or for half-mile excursions, because it's very lightweight, very cost-effective, and allows you to do a lot of R&D in a cost-effective manner, and could be manufactured very quickly. So that being said, it's a great, great rod. Now here's one challenge. One challenge you may experience is that when the rod heats up and expands, it lets go of the bigger end. So you'll notice from all reputable aluminum rod manufacturers, there are divots or say an indent that contains a locator. So this locator allows you to keep the bearing in place. You have to drill a hole in your bearing or have a reputable machine shop do that for you to keep the rod in place from spinning. So that's one caveat. Secondly is size. To be able to have the strength with a lightweight aluminum rod, it typically, if not all the time, is physically larger than a steel rod. So that being said, you're limited to space. So going back to the Odyssey, the J35 engine, there is limited crank case space, so it would be fairly difficult, especially with the lower swing and throw, to fit an aluminum rod in there comfortably. And because the vehicle I have is something where space is paramount and I want to keep things very nice in check, I will continue to use steel rods if I rebuild the engine again, and make sure my tuning window is very comfortable by using good fuel and tuning properly for both partial and full throttle. And above and beyond that, it's something that I don't have to worry about longevity. And that brings me to the final point with aluminum rods. Steel rods, you can run them for hundreds of thousands of miles. We've tested aluminum rods on the street for 40,000 miles, sorry, not 40,000 rods, but 40,000 miles before we saw the need to upgrade them. So they don't last an extremely long time. And if you're in the snow belt, I would highly encourage you not to start your aluminum rod engine.
Your friend is
Hopefully we're still okay. Okay, sorry guys, I had a call come in, so I apologize. I'm using my phone to do this. So are we still okay? Everyone hears me? Good, beautiful. So that being said, in the snow belt areas, or places where it snows, I would highly encourage you not to just run your engines when it's cold, because when the engine warms up and you throw hot oil on a cooler aluminum rod, it can break it. So, but you have pros and cons of every setup. I love the aluminum rods because of the weight. I love the cost-effective manner of choosing aluminum rods and using them, because you can do a lot of R&D quickly and in a cost-effective manner that's cheaper than steel rods. They are shock absorbers, so they're very, very forgiving on the crankshaft bearings, on the crankshaft and the rod bearings as well. And above and beyond that, it can act as a variable compression device, which is fantastic. On the other hand, longevity is a bit of a challenge. Above and beyond that, you may have a challenge with size of the rod itself. And as you think about that as well, it's something that a lot of people are not comfortable building with because of that piston to head clearance. People are just not really comfortable with that, some engine builders. So I love it. I use it exclusively in all my drag engines and test engines as well. But something like the van steals my, or anything with a challenging cranking space, is still my material of choice when it comes to rods. So hopefully that answered your question properly. Thank you so much for that. What else do we have?
Next question is from Andrew Milo.
Hello, Andrew. Andrew Milo. And was that on Instagram? Beautiful.
Yes.
And hopefully you're watching as well, Andrew.
Okay. What is one question that you would love to modify that you have never worked on before?
One question?
Vehicle.
Oh, vehicle. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, a vehicle that I would like to work on that I've never modified before. A Tesla. I have not had the opportunity to modify a Tesla or any 100% EV vehicles yet. So that being said, I'm fascinated, absolutely fascinated with the future of motorsports, with the future of transportation. It's just something that we as tuners, as builders, have to embrace. Behind me I have one of the hybrids that we play around with, one of the OEMs that we have a partnership with. And that opened my eyes tremendously to some great things. And no matter how we dice it and slice it, no matter as much as we love the sound and anti-lag and all that good stuff, the internal combustion engine will soon come to pass. And it will be more of a historical application or something that's more vintage or nostalgic in nature. The future of motorsports, the future of transportation has to do with electric motors. So that being said, I would love to be able to explore one. I may end up picking one up just to have a whirl at it, but that's one project car that is near and dear to the future of transportation that I haven't played around with. So hopefully that answers your question properly.
Next question is from Fetch1209 on Instagram.
Okay, Fetch1209, thank you very much for submitting your question.
How much would it cost to build a TT M96 with around 1,000 HP by you guys? Okay,
so he wants to know how much it would cost to build a Porsche M96 engine twin turbo by us. Now, for those of you who don't know what an M96 is the Porsche's first foray into public consumable water-cooled engines. So many of you know the Porsche 911, and the Porsche 911 is a very popular, iconic vehicle. Beautiful. Start off air-cooled, and people love that iconic air-cooled sound. Many purists and enthusiasts and Porschephiles tend to believe that the 911 died when it went water cooled. But I'm a firm believer in progress. With the requirements for emissions, requirements for noise, efficiency, it made sense to convert over in the late 90s. So that being said, there's an opportunity for Porsche to convert over to water-cooled engines. And the M96 was a very cost-effective foray for them. And it went into the Boxster, which saved Porsche financially, and also went into the 911 Carrera, C2, C4, you name it. People didn't like it. It just had a bad rap coming out the gate. And like with any engine, there were some shortcomings. And we see that, that's why I guess, I'm very proud of my Honda heritage. And even though some of my hiring clients don't like me talking about it, I am very proud of it because it allowed me to look at engines as a project, identify the shortcomings and address them accordingly. So when I started my journey into the Porsche market, I looked at this engine, and the first thing, for those of you who joined me last week, first thing I noticed was something very important, the intake ports. Humongous in M96, and that lends itself very well to power. But there were some shortcomings with the sleeves, shortcomings with the intermediate shaft, bearings in particular, shortcomings with the style of rods or connecting rods that are in them. The pistons didn't lend themselves very well to power. The valve train was very optimal for the driving conditions and I would say the stresses that the factory engine would see within its lifetime, but for high performance left some opportunities on the table. So my goal was to address those and really push the envelope and see what we can get away with. And I'm very pleased to say with sleeving the block, addressing the valve train, improving camshaft profiles, even leaving the factory buckets, addressing the intermediate shaft issues and also any problems with the crankshaft itself, and exploring forced pistons and ideal steel rods, we were able to eclipse the 4-digit mark with an M96 engine reliably, and also using ARP studs wherever we could, and heavy, I'll say it one more time, heavy use of coatings and treatments to be able to make sure that things are very, very comfortable together. When all was said and done, and of course keeping everything in check with some good oils, I use pure oil, that's my oil of choice, we've been able to do wonderful things turbocharged. So when it comes to cost, it can be a fairly involved excursion. You can expect to spend anywhere from $40,000 to $50,000 just on the engine itself to be able to get it to a point where it's extremely robust and give you years of reliable service, even in the 4-digit mark. But what's also key is the engine management solution and tuning. Very, very important. So my blue 911, which is very iconic with the 2 crazy turbos hanging out the rear, that was the first Porsche that I built. It's a 76 911. I embedded an M96 engine into it, and that was the first foray into me experimenting, and it's been extremely reliable. Start off with shutting down my dyno in the back here. My dyno can handle up to about 1,100 horsepower comfortably, but it shut it down.
Question is going to be a Facebook question.
Okay, Facebook question.
Emmanuel Paris.
Emmanuel Paris, hello. Hopefully you're watching as well.
Would you consider double ignition, such as the 964 and 993, more or less performance than a mono ignition with high multi-spark coils, such as AEM high output IGBT inductive smart coil? Okay,
so what he's asking is, would I be okay or prefer, which one do I prefer in essence, between a twin spark set up in an air-cooled engine with a 964 or 993, or a high output single coil? Fantastic question, and I'm very excited about this question because it's right up the alley of what I've explored. Years ago, in the 90s, when Porsche really had the 993, 964 as the epitome of the 911 engine design, their combustion chambers, as they noticed, were fairly large. And a single spark from the earlier years, because it's hemispherical in nature, it's like half a globe. So just think of a globe cut in half. That's pretty much a combustion chamber. It takes a lot of energy to be able to combust cleanly in that combustion chamber. So what a lot of people did, especially with the earlier engines, and people still do to today, they infused 2 spark plugs to be able to properly combust the clean intake charge in the combustion chamber and give it a uniform, complete combustion to make things more efficient, make it much cleaner. It was still distributed and so on and so forth. And that's what we had to use. We had Bosch coils that had a decent amount of spark energy when you measure it in joules or millijoules, which is a unit of energy. And fast forward to today, he mentioned the IGBT coils from AEM, one of my partners. That coil pack is ridiculous. I make a joke sometimes that it could combust water. It cannot, but I'm so impressed with how, I think it's over 135 millijoules of energy. It's very, very robust. And with even a higher dwell setting for brief periods, it can even create more spark energy. So what does that mean for someone with a large hemispherical combustion chamber? You don't have to do that anymore. I've experimented using single coils in a large hemispherical combustion chamber in an older air-cooled Porsche. We've pushed to over 200 horses per cylinder and saw good burn and very efficient burn. So it all had to do with spark energy. Now you can have a single coil, a single spark plug, especially with exotic materials we have now, iridium and silver, and you can combust a hemispherical head very efficiently. And you have control. You can do individual cylinder tuning, you can do all kind of great stuff. So you don't have to do, twin spark. Now, to be able to give a nice throwback, to give that nice look of something nostalgic and very exciting and make it look old school, of course, we've had projects, turbocharged projects even here, and high RPM, natural aspirated 964 and 993 engines where we kept the dual spark setup. It looks really cool. We're able to use higher output single coils. We're able to use an AEM Infinity to control the ignition parameters and do a great job with it. But when you start pushing the combustion cylinder pressures, you start to get some misfire. And whenever I can, especially if the customer's okay with it, I would opt for a higher output Denso single on an older air-cooled setup, let's say the older 3.0s. And we even use the IGBT whenever I can from AEM. So you can eat your cake and have it too. You can have high spark energy and not have to drill into your head and put a second spark plug. And not have to worry about a twin setup in your distributor or large expensive multi-plug setup, which is pretty cool. So hopefully that answers your question properly. My experience has been nostalgia. Yeah, sure. Stay with the multi plugs in each cylinder, but you don't have to. You can definitely have some good spark energy and efficiency and power using a single high output coil per cylinder. Thank you.
Our next question is from AJ Thompson 78.
AJ Thompson 78. That sounds familiar. I think he's submitted stuff before.
Everyone.
Yeah, almost every week. So thank you, AJ. I appreciate that. Yes.
When having built an engine like the one in the Odyssey or the Genesis, how do you know it will be reliable, long-lasting, and won't blow up after only a couple thousand miles? For example, what would set apart a Bisimoto built K24 from any other shop built K24?
Okay.
Would it have better pistons, rods, bearings, oil pump, etc.?
So all of the above. One thing that I would say, even my team sees it sometimes, and sometimes they don't because I'm always working. But I blow a lot of stuff up, many times on purpose. I am the type of engineer that will build something, push it to the limits, damage it, and then know how far to go, and then back off about 30%. Just to keep things very simple. It's more involved than that, but to keep things simply, in simple terms. So that being said, many times I've cracked heads here, thrown rods. I've done failure analysis here on the dyno. And that gives me, and then I get excited. And when I break something, I'm like, oh my God, it's so fantastic. And I've done it on Porsche engines, Honda engines, Mustang, you name it, I've done it all. And that's how I can do that. I damage it and then back off. And then what's the benefit? I know how far to push it. All of you can benefit from that experience, and it's fantastic. So how does it differ from what other people do? I don't wait to get parts from other companies to start building things. I have no problem designing components or partner with people that can help me bring things to life, and I do in-house testing. So based upon my feedback, where most shops may just get a rod from here and get a piston from here and put it together and send a customer on their way, I start from scratch. Also, the years and years of experimentation has helped me tremendously in knowing what to do and what not to do. Just to give you an example, in my early years, far back as the late 1990s and early 2000s, my failure to success ratio in percentage, it was like 90 to 10. 90% of things I tried failed, 10% succeeded, but succeeded well. Nowadays, that's almost reversed, where 90% of the things I have do extremely well, and 10% I'll still have some failure and learn from it. Which I shouldn't say failure, is more of a learning opportunity. So that being said, why do I have so much success nowadays? Experience. And also some of the things that many people don't see. Blowing stuff up, breaking stuff, figuring things out, having challenges and then overcoming them, staying up all night rebuilding an engine again, spending hours and hours on a dyno. Those are the things that most people don't see. They just see a project out there. I'm out at events, I'm shooting flames, I'm having fun. I'm at Cars and Coffee, I'm on television. People don't see, a lot of people, especially those who are not close to us, don't see how much work goes into these projects. So it's a lot of work, it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, a lot of sleepless nights. Even right now, my eyes are a bit burning because I didn't sleep well last night. I think I took a bit of a nap before I started with this. It's been pretty crazy of late, and it'll continue to be crazy, and we continue to experiment. So I know it's a mouthful and it's a lot, but that's what I feel differentiates myself from others. The one thing I really miss a lot is me being on the track racing. And I think there's a question coming up about that Rand told me earlier today. So that being said, I'll address that, but I need to be out there. I miss racing so much, but taking care of customers and my experimentation takes a lot of my time. It doesn't give me much time to have fun. So I need to work out more balance, but we'll get to that later. Okay, so hopefully that answered your question properly. Thank you very much for submitting that.
Next question is from Alokimi.
How's that?
Alokimi.
Alokimi, okay.
It's on Instagram.
On Instagram, hello.
Have you done any diesel tuning?
No diesel tuning yet. The only diesel I have in my arsenal is my Dodge 3500 Ram dually, which is my tow vehicle. I use to tow the single trailer and my enclosed 44-footer. But no, I haven't done any diesel tuning. Diesels are very interesting. I would like to get into that, but my plate's so full. Maybe one of these days I'll play around with it. And by all means, I will share that with all of you. So at this time, no.
Okay, another question is from 2CamSam84.
Okay, 2CamSam84, good evening.
When are we going to see the Insight in action again, or the CRX?
Okay, so he wants to know when we're going to see my Insight, which is my hybrid race car with a single cam F22 engine, or my CRX. So my CRX is no longer with me. My very first vehicle, I did a ton of street racing with it, broke tons of records with it. It was my test bed for the D series and finally the F, maybe extremely popular, and it was sitting in my garage at home collecting dust. She belongs on the track out there. A good friend of mine, the twins, actually two of them, they did a lot of the electrical work here at the facility, promised to put the car on the track where it belongs. So I let it go for pretty much nothing. And with their promise that they'll put it on the track, it's been 2 years now, it's still not on the track. So guys, please get out there. I'm sure she misses it. So I don't have that. I don't have control over the CRX anymore. The Insight, man, that car is awesome. The first front wheel drive to hit 150, that was all motor, which is very exciting. Did tons, it's just an amazing platform, still full unibody. There are no unibody front wheel drives all motor running low nines. We did 920 with that, 152. I missed that. The car is right here next to me. I'm looking at it right there. It's awesome, great test bed. I just haven't had the time. But I can commit something to you. You will see her in 2018. You definitely see her. So she's just sitting there. Once I get all my clients taken care of, I have a very big project coming up very soon that I need to really address. I have about 3 in the shop here that are high profile that need to go as well. Then I'll get her out there. She's a lot of fun, extremely reliable, all motor, tons of technology. And I have more stuff that I've done that I need to test to make it even faster, to make it a faster unibody single cam. So I'm really excited about that. To have an all motor single cam running low nines, it's awesome. 2.4 liter, awesome car, I love it. And have some great partners with it. And she's looking at me right now, she's sad. But babes, I'll get you out there, okay? You'll be out there soon. Just hang tight. You'll see her in 2018, I promise.
How are we on time?
Time, we're at 4:01, we're almost done, but let's take maybe two more. Two more.
Eddie
if possible.
Eddie J35Z3 writes, I have a 2011 Honda Accord Coupe V6 6-speed.
Okay, manual, that's good.
I have an intake, 3 cat delete, and a muffler delete. My goal is to have 300 horsepower to the wheels. What else do I need besides a tune?
Okay. So he has a J series, wants to make 300 wheels. Honestly, the easiest way to do that is forced induction. Way easy. Now, if you're hardcore like me and you love a challenge and you want to be able to do that, it's actually quite not difficult. Camshafts and pistons will get you there. Camshaft, pistons, and tune, you'll get there. And you'll get to 300 to the wheels, no problem. That's not a challenge at all. The J series, the platform we paid a lot of attention to, has tons of opportunities, tons of promise. But if you want something that's really straightforward, boost it, turbocharge it, supercharge it, you'll get there just eyes closed. But if you like a little challenge, you can meet and exceed your goals with pistons and camshafts and valve train, very important as well. And a tune, you'll be good to go. Okay?
All right, last question.
Last question. And guys, if I didn't get your question today, please forgive me. Next week, I'll definitely get to it. Keep the questions coming, and I'll be more than happy to assist.
Okay, this is from Absolute Kelvin.
Absolute Calvin.
How much power is a SEMA 986 bi-turbo making? How much would it be to replicate the performance on another 986?
Okay, so 986, for those of you who may not know, is the code name from Porsche for the Boxster. So we have a center seat Boxster that we built, mid-engine, very well balanced, has a carbon fiber Cayman-esque roof, and we'll probably show that next week so you guys can take a look. The vehicle was built, once again, with the driver in mind. And the goal has always been to make it very driver friendly. So if you're not comfortable with high horsepower, or if you're comfortable with high horsepower, this vehicle is a vehicle for you. 350 to 500 wheel is the spectrum. If you're a novice driver, you'll hover in the lower horsepower range, 350. So at wastegate, 350 horsepower. 348 thereabout. 500 wheel is full boost. We can go higher, but it maxes out, close to maxing out the turbochargers, so that's it. Now, how much? It's very similar, it's just a derivation of M96 engine. Started its life as a 2.7, now hovers as a 3.2. That being said, sleeving, valve train, camshaft, so on and so forth, all involved, still hovers in the 40 to 50,000 range for the power plant itself. And then that doesn't get into the clutches and the transmission and so on and so forth. So for the engine, that's about right. So if you're interested in that, feel free to write to us at sales@bisimoto.com. And my team and I will be able to accommodate you as soon as we get rid of all these crazy projects we have going. So guys, thank you so much once again for a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for your patience with the technical difficulties we had earlier today. I really appreciate all of you tuning in today. If you have questions, I'm going to put up a post very soon. By all means, ask your questions there. We'll address them next week. Keep the love coming. And by all means, once again, your feedback is very, very important to me. I take criticism constructively. Your feedback is my oxygen. I really appreciate that. Please keep it coming. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Take care now, guys, and cheers. Have a good one.